So, hey guys, welcome to the newest episode of the SaaS Sessions podcast. And today I have an amazing guest. I have the big man with me on the show. He's currently the VP of Growth at Jamber. So, if you guys don't know Jamber, it's a mug which is made for the hands. And if you guys seeing the video, it's the one he's holding up in his hands. He's also a core member of underscore VC, which is an early stage venture capital firm in NYC, and he's advisor to multiple startups. Uh, in the past, he's been the director of engagement and analytics at growthhackers.com. And the introduction doesn't stop here. In addition to this, Anuj just recently launched a book called Growth Hacking for Dummies. So, hey Anuj, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's awesome to be here, man.
Yeah, great. So Anuj, is there anything I missed out on your introduction, or is there anything you want to add?
Well, I think that maybe the thing you did miss out was that, like maybe a lot of people who might land up listening to this podcast, I had no background in anything growth 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
Uh, so, I think if anything, that should be a point of hope for people who themselves, have never been in the field or don't know where to start. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I think you started as a software engineer and then you transitioned into growth. So how was your journey in that way? And how do you transition into SaaS particularly?
Yeah, so I'll take it even one step before that. In that my education is actually in science, right? So I have two master's degrees in biochemistry and in
Yeah.
chemistry, and you would think that is a really weird sort of transition to be making from something like that all the way, to SaaS. But this was an insight that Sean Ellis actually had when we were first talking about me joining the team, was that anybody with a science background might actually be better positioned for such a role, because what is the one thing you do in science? You experiment a lot.
Yeah.
And my first experiment doc at Growth Hackers was the same one we used, or you and I or everybody listening to this will have used in school,
Right.
which is the
Hmm.
same doc that had the aim and the hypothesis, the materials, the method, your observations and your results and your conclusions and next steps. So the process is exactly the same. It's just the context within which it's applied is slightly different,
Right.
uh, right? And so, in many ways, all of us know the basic growth hacking process. It's just
Right.
we might have forgotten it, or it might have gotten buried under all of the jargon that now exists around the topic.
Great. That's an interesting insight. So let's talk about the growth which is happening today, right? Because I know the world, as I said in the beginning, it's uncertain times for a lot of startups. So how do you think like growth is functioning, like growth teams are functioning these uncertain times? Because even like the teams which are not growth teams, different teams are for different teams, agility is the key. Like they have to move fast, they have to change everything fast, because when you started 2020 your strategy was different 2 months into the year, and like everything has to change. Like whatever you have planned for the H1, you have to change everything. And I think speed is the thing here, and then you have to try new things out, see what works, and then move on. That is applicable to non-growth teams as well. So how do you think, the growth team which is there, which is managing in these uncertain times?
Yeah. So I think, a lot of, so if you think about when growth teams actually get instituted within companies, it's when the company has moved past product market fit, right? And uh, so many people who become part of growth teams have never gone through that process of understanding how did this product even become a must have in the first place,
Right.
right? And I think it's almost like growth teams need to put themselves in the shoes of, if I were a founder, what would I have to do
Mhm.
to validate that my product is truly a must have? Right? Because that's the condition that exists today, is People are making very clear cut decisions based on value, and only the true must haves are surviving the cut.
Right.
Right. And so the process, I think, stays exactly the same of, if you were to validate a product, right, just from scratch, what would you, right? You'd go and validate it. What is the true nature of the problem?
Right.
You'd go and validate, is the way we are delivering or thinking of delivering the solution the right way to address the problem as it exists today?
Right.
Right. And then constantly iterate with your customers to ensure that not only are you delivering value, you're delivering it as quickly as possible to
Right.
your customers, right?
Right.
So I think it's almost like a rediscovery of that cycle. But
Right.
to the point you're making, like, the situation is so fluid. Like, one week, CPMs will be down, and one week they'll be up, and there's
Yeah.
just flux. So
Yeah.
what that is telling us is that this cycle of constantly understanding the nature of what makes you a must have
Hmm.
also needs to be accelerated. So
Right.
the amount of qualitative sort of feedback you need to be getting, the frequency of that, if that was normally for you, I talk to my customers every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, or
Hmm.
or every quarter, whatever that frequency was, you need to, like, really compress that frequency down and make it a weekly thing. Because not only are you trying to understand, hey, do my current customers still want me the way I am today,
Hmm.
but you're also trying to understand all the people who could become my customers, how do they want me or my product in
Right.
today's scenario,
Right.
right? So it's as much a retention problem as
As
it is an acquisition
acquisition.
problem.
Totally, totally. So I think that one thing is because of the customer behavior is also changing, right? And a change is there in, like, all the segments, and again it would be there in all the stages of the like, funnel as well. So like, when you're acquiring customers in this, in this constantly changing behavior, because like, 1 week before it might be different, 1 week after this week can be different. So how do you try to sell your product or your service without being very intrusive, right? Because how, or maybe how do you make your product very essential to your customers? Like, position it in a way that they find your product essential.
Totally. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? Is that uh, the only things that are considered intrusive are things that by definition are non-essential to you, right? So what that means is sort of trying to step back and get a really macro sense of, no matter what kind of product you offer today, like, what is not changing or what is going to remain constant, right? One is what we just discussed, right? People have stopped thinking about things that are wants or nice to haves, and
Right.
are focusing exclusively on need and must have,
Essentials. Yeah.
right? So I think that is step number one, is to figure out, how do you become a must have in this particular scenario, right? What can you
Right.
emphasize about your product's use case in the context of a specific customer segment that is more of a must have?
Right.
So that's one. The second, as a function of people only wanting things they need, people are way more price conscious than they've ever been, right? So, while otherwise they might be okay with, okay, I'll spend $5 more here or $10 more there, that's all gone. And generally, again, price consciousness only exists when people do not truly appreciate the value to them,
Right.
right? And
Hmm.
so you've got to, and keep in mind the broader context, also of things like, it's not only just about the companies you might be selling to, but they're ultimately people, right? And people
Right.
themselves have either been furloughed, they've lost their jobs, whatever that may be,
Hmm.
right? So it may not be a situation where you need to extract money right now. If you are in that sort of a position, it may be one of those buy now pay later sort of scenarios, or it may be a function of you getting an even better understanding of what is this new universe I operate within? Like, I know that in
Right.
normal circumstances, for example, my customer may be A, B, and C. But in
Right.
this new scenario, my customer could also include D, E, and F,
Right.
right? And because that is the lens through which your potential customer is looking at you and sort of comparing you, in a universe, not in a vacuum, right? So I think you've got to sort of re-establish what is your comparative value in this new universe, and can you find a way to bring yourself to the top of that value so that this entire question of price isn't as big of a consideration, because by definition you are more of a must have than everybody else,
Right. Totally. Yeah.
right? And I think the third sort of thing, right, is people have sort of s- gone into this almost sort of hounding mindset, right, or hoarding mindset. And this is, I think, no more apparent than, at least in the US, right? There are all these toilet paper shortages and people are stocking up on water and all sorts of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I
Hmm.
think that is just uh, a sort of, an example of, the way people are thinking, right? Is
Panic
that
buying kind of thing. Yeah.
right? And so, is there a way to sort of position yourself, similarly, that, hey, that not only are we a must have, that if you don't use us now, you will not be better prepared for what's coming down the line for you, which
Right.
again requires a much better understanding of your customer's mindset, which I think goes back to that point I was talking about. The frequency with which you start to get feedback from your market, that cycle needs to accelerate dramatically.
Right. I think that will only happen when people see value in what you're saying, or maybe your existing customers, right? So which will be like value delivery to the customer, or kind of value based selling. So how do you figure out what value your product delivers? Obviously, one good way is to ask your customers that how they see your product or what benefits they get. But what are maybe what are some of the other ways that you can do that, or what are some of the questions that you can ask your customers, like in terms of figuring out the value part?
Yeah. So my favorite question to ask customers is, why are you using us?
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And especially in a time like this, when you already have limitations on your own buying capabilities, purchasing capabilities,
Right.
you know, all of that. Why are you continuing to use us? Like,
Hmm.
because if you can understand more about that, you can use that information to attract more people who have those same sort of either problems or think about your solution in a particular way, right? And
Right.
so I think this goes back to the importance of understanding the language people use to
Right.
understand, how they articulate the value of your product. And
Mhm.
by asking, why do you keep using us, I think it's inevitable you will find use cases that you never thought of.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
The second thing I like to do is, once people tell me why, I like to dig a little deeper and
Mhm.
ask the sort of so what question.
Right.
Right? Because a lot of the times the why, can land up being superficial, right? Or it may point to an immediate benefit versus the true benefit that it's really giving them, right? So for example, you know they might say something like, oh, I'm using it because it makes tasks whatever 20 minutes quicker than it would otherwise, which is great as an immediate benefit. But the down the line benefit might be, I have the peace of mind that these tasks are taken care of.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think it's important to get to that core, because what should ultimately happen is this true core benefit is what should roll up to what you measure as your North Star metric. Because your
Right.
North Star metric really should be a reflection of the true value you provide to your customers,
Mhm.
right? and
Totally.
and if you're and if they're saying something new that isn't gelling with the way you're measuring value delivered, then I think that's an opportunity for you to rejig your hypothesis for what value you truly provide, right? And double down now on this uh, sort of new way you've discovered of explaining the value you deliver, which you can then use to attract more people who are already telling you in tough times, I find you a must have.
Right, right. So, yeah, totally. So I think the answers will definitely come from the customers in terms of how you determine the value of your product. And obviously, the product owner can't really decide the value of the product. It's always the customers. So and so I saw a lot of companies, like lot of SaaS companies specifically, coming up with like new kind of new use cases, as we just talked about, right? So it can be as simple as adding like giving a part of the product as a freemium, just to empathize with people, so that they can use and they can solve their pain points, but also getting to use the product, and which can essentially if they build this freemium product in this situation, which can essentially become like a sort of hook even after this situation ends, because people start liking it, and they could see, like, people use it for a month and they upgrade, so they hit their aha moment, whatever that is, right? The normal prospects become product qualified leads for them, and that's kind of helping them convert from free users to paid, paid users. So do you think some things are there? So in this situation, like, you are laying out the foundation for something that can be a part of your core product or core business cycle even after this pandemic is over. So do you think, like, some things are here for, like, these changes are here to stay even after the pandemic is over?
Uh, Likely. So, I'm glad you brought up this example that you did. In fact, there's a company here in Boston called Remote HQ, who, as the name suggests, creates a remote working software. So they're like
Right.
really ideally positioned
Yeah.
uh, for this time. But even what they did was they made a blanket statement. You know what? This is a tough time. We're just going to make our software free for 3 months for anybody who wants to use it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is, they're clearly going to give up a lot of revenue to do that. But what they're going to gain are, I think, two or three things which they would not be able to get otherwise. One is that they are going out of their way to express humanity, right? And this is the time to do this, right?
Right.
Showing empathy, right,
Yeah.
at a time when the entire world is struggling, right, is going to land up reaping dividends for you way down the line, because everybody remembers who was there for you when you had tough times,
Totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
right? And so this is not as much about selling or extracting value right now, with the
Yeah.
caveat being that you have some level of runway to allow you to do that.
Yeah. Right.
But if you can do it, uh, and by allowing this just broad-based expansive usage, you are, to your point, allowing people to develop the habit for your product,
Yeah.
because now
Yeah.
there's no strings attached, right?
Right.
And once, if you allow for that, you now also have the avenues open for learning from the quantitative data that you get, but how are all of these people using it?
Mm-hmm.
And by opening it out to everybody, you get many more insights on different segments and how they're using it, that you may not have otherwise gotten, right? So
Totally.
for
Yeah.
example, like Zoom, they've
Yeah.
opened out their software to be free for all grade schools here,
Yeah.
right? No limits on anything. That is a use case they would not have been able to
Do it.
understand greater if they won't
Right.
have just allowed free use,
Right. Totally. Yeah.
right? And the same thing with this remote HQ thing.
Right.
uh, and so your opportunity for learning for the future is just that much greater from the quantitative data. And again, because they're using, and you're literally doing them a favor by allowing them to use
Right.
it for free for this extended period of time, they will be more than happy to talk to you about how they're using it, what
Right.
value they're getting out of it. So you have those many more opportunities to learn about uh, true value that all of these new segments that have opened themselves out are uh, getting out of this. And the third, I think, big benefit this has is that, given that everybody is looking for, at some level, a level of connection here, right? I mean, uh, like, for example, I'm doing these weekly or daily coffee calls with people when I get random people showing up, no agenda, but in some cases you have people very specific office hours. Hey, I'm a VC, I'm
Yes.
going to help you refine your pitch deck, whatever the case may be. What this is the foundation for is a lot of community building.
Right.
And they say in growth that there is no silver bullet,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But I think sort of community building is the one thing that maybe comes close to being that silver bullet, because at the end of the day, your competitors can copy every feature, every discount, every offer that you can
Right.
come up with, right?
Right.
What they cannot copy is the level of passion people have for your offering and the level of loyalty that you develop for your offering,
Totally. Yeah.
right? And so, yes, there is the short term play, by doing some of these things, but I think the greater advantage is the long term benefit and foundation you're building for
Right.
down the line.
Right. So two things, after this, I want to discuss. So, one is obviously the habit creation thing that we talked about, right? So I think it's a great point, Anush. Like most of the companies should really focus on, that habit formation, like for their service or for their product specifically now. And once the habit is formed, and even after this pandemic is over, the people are getting hooked to the platform, so they might there are higher chances that they will upgrade. So it's again what you said, like don't sell now, like build a relationship now and sell like 3 months or 6 months later when all these things are over, when you're hooked them to your platform and you have created sort of habit. So and obviously second thing is you talked in the last, like short term gains versus short term wins versus long term rewards. So it can be crucial as well, right? Because the next step you're going to take is going to be laying the foundation again, as I said, for something which is going to be in your product even after this thing is over. And you have to be very careful about it as a company on what decisions or what steps you're taking, so that it affects you, it helps you get the short term wins as well for the 3 months 6 months during this pandemic. And it also helps you like for the long term, like so all the users you got are there to stay even after, like this whole thing is over. So how do companies like be really careful about
Yeah.
this?
So, and I think there's one more sort of point to be made here is
Mhm.
clearly there will be an audience, despite all of this, that will not be ready for you, right?
Right.
Just because of their personal situation or whatever it may be. Right?
Yeah.
But just given the current scenario, right,
Mhm.
because people don't have a lot of flexibility to buy,
Right.
by what that means is they're a lot in window shopping mode,
Right.
right? Or they're just browsing for, when I have the budget or when I have the flexibility, I'm going to keep this thing in mind for that time. Right?
Right.
So this is the time to, I think, keep in mind those audiences as well. Is while you may not be able to extract value from them right now, you can
Yeah.
still engage them somehow right now. So even if you're
Right.
running ads right now, yes, there are ads for the people who may find immediate benefit, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't recognize that, hey, we realize that you may not be ready, and if you're not ready,
Yeah.
right, here's maybe a free resource for you to keep in mind, or here's a different way for you to keep your skills up using our platform in some way, like some avenue for them to
Yeah.
you know keep, or to have
Kind of a
yourself be
hook.
top of mind for them
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
right time. So there
Right.
might be, especially if you're running a lot of top of funnel stuff, you might be doing a lot of retargeting campaigns right now for for
Right.
down the line, or you might be like prospecting to find who are these people who might be in browse mode versus I can still buy mode.
Yeah. Right. That's I think you have to be really careful about extracting or segmenting these people, right? Because people who would be serious, they could even upgrade to the paid plan even in this
Totally.
situation, right? If they want to buy. But
Yeah.
that does not, if people are using for free, that does not mean you can't expect value from them. You can obviously connect with them to see how they are using the product, just as we discussed earlier, that
Yeah.
talking to customers will give you new avenues to to use new avenues of use cases for the same product, that which the product team wouldn't know, like because the situation has changed, they are using my product differently, right? And I think that can be true for a lot of products. I think of like Airtable or Notion. So like they would have discussed about use cases for the HR team, marketing team, admin
Totally.
team, sales team, but now they like health team. Like how is a health team using Notion, for example, like where you can put all these docs together and you can share it with people easily or something like that. So
Yeah, this brings up a really interesting point as to how you can go about attracting new people even in this time, right? Is just as there are
mhm,
these new use cases, as
right,
you find all of these, what you'll find is in these adjacent use cases, there are these other players that you were never aware of.
right, yeah, that's also true, right,
And as you find these adjacent players who you weren't ever thinking of, this is an ideal opportunity for you to start forming partnerships with these people, because these players are themselves struggling to find new audiences, right? So this is
right,
a clear win-win for both of you if
right.
you can find these adjacent partners as a function of these other use cases.
I just saw, like, I was browsing Slack apps on Slack marketplace, and I just saw that there's a Microsoft Teams beta app as an app on the Slack marketplace. So I don't know how is that gonna pan out, but you just brought this thing up, so I remembered. Yeah, like straight competitors.
Yeah, no,
But
and I've been thinking about this ever since more since yesterday, because so there's this sort of casual fast food chain called Panera in the US, right? And clearly, a lot of their business normally used to come from people eating in, but
Mhm.
that is obviously not happening right now.
Right. Hmm.
So what they had started doing was, okay, you can still do takeout,
Okay. Right. Hmm.
and then they double down on that and say, okay, if coming to the store is too hard for you, we'll do delivery. And they were just
Hmm.
constantly looking for ways to keep their force employed, right? And so people started taking them up on these offers. They're like, great, why will I not get the food delivered
Right.
to myself? Yes, everything is going to cost a little bit more, but that's fine. But the thing they started doing yesterday was they were like, look, if you're stepping out or if you're getting stuff delivered from us, why don't you also let us take care of your groceries?
Right.
So since yes, so from yesterday in their app, not only can you order food from their menu, they've got a list of sort of these high volume groceries items that people step out for or have delivered anyway. And they have their people employed to go run around and get these things, right? And it's clearly a more convenient thing for the people placing the order, because now it's multiple things in one place.
Right.
It's clearly great for Panera because now their people can stay employed for longer,
Totally. Yeah.
as well, right? And I had never put together in my mind that this could be a use case that Panera would deliver groceries,
Right.
for me, right? But they
Hmm.
are also using, their power of purchasing to buy these groceries and not have them be overly expensive just because they are now providing them,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Some
So
some
there's an
new use
online
cases.
and offline sort of application to this whole partnership model in this time, which I think a lot of people
Mhm.
should be leaning into.
Yeah, I think which works out for them as well. In terms of getting new customers now, and keeping them on after this thing is over. That's really. So I think, yeah, we have reached the course of the show. I have a few lightning questions, or rapid
Sure.
fire questions. Three. So yeah, Anuj, just answer whatever comes on top of your mind. So
Sure.
what's your since people have a lot of time now, what's your favorite book that you would recommend to the listeners apart from yours and Sean Ellis's?
um,
Obviously.
yeah, so I'll tell you the book that changed my life. It
Okay.
was one that's called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Finman. uh, it's
Okay.
written by
Hmm.
Dr. Richard Finman. It's an old book.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
And Richard Feynman was, an atomic
Amazing guy.
physicist.
Yeah.
He worked on the atom bomb,
Right.
and it's about his life story. But the
Hmm.
central message of that life story was try anything once. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Right? Which
Nice.
ironically turns out to be a book about growth hacking in
Yeah.
many ways,
Totally.
because
I
that's
was just gonna
exactly
say that.
it.
Yeah, crazy. So yeah, so next, so what keeps you going? Like, what's the constant motivation for you?
I, I think I'm motivated by trying to find more things I really like doing,
Okay, nice.
which again
Mhm.
is just all about experimenting, because every day I find more and more things I don't like. But that hunt for finding things that will bring me more joy in my life
Mhm.
is really interesting, and that I could be anything from doing shows like this. It's clearly a
Right.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
It could be working at certain kinds of companies. It's you know anything, but it's more. I'm a process guy at heart, so
Mhm.
it's more about the process of trying to find things that bring more joy to me, uh, and which then allows me to almost in a way blur my work and my personal life in any ways, because it's just life becomes one big experiment, in a way. And I think that's I think it's its own sustainable positive feedback loop that keeps me going.
Awesome, awesome. I think I share the same kind of feeling, yeah, in terms of trying out new things and yeah. So and the last one, like if the current you could call the 25-year-old you, what would you say?
Oh boy. um i I think I would say be more open minded, right? I think one thing that I think we all tend to lose a lot of as we get older, and this is very subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
is we get very caught up in what makes complete sense, and situations we can exploit, right? And so we develop a very transactional mindset,
Mm-hmm.
versus if you think about the way kids think, like kids are very much about exploring,
Right.
and they're not really about does this make sense or not. It's
Yeah.
about sort of enjoying the moment, right? This is why kids put things in their mouths all the time, is because they're just trying
Right.
to experience life.
Yeah.
uh, and and I think that ability to preserve that exploratory mindset, I think would have served me a lot better uh, than those years I lost having very fixed ideas and notions about certain things,
Right.
thinking, of course, like every 25-year-old does, that everything there is to know. And uh, you know and because I think that would have opened myself out on a personal and professional level to a lot more joy in life, than whatever time I lost out on. So I think uh, retain the childlikeness and the kid's mindset as much as possible.
Yeah, that's super interesting, Anuj. Yeah. So I think, yeah, thanks a lot for joining in, Anuj, and giving your time and coming on the show. I mean, great insights from you, and I think it's gonna be like people are gonna love it.
Excellent, excellent. No, this was a lot of fun, man.
Great. Yeah. So thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in, and stay safe, and we are all in this together.
Cheers.
Cheers.